if you start thinking of machine learning as another representation of your data, again, as a table, then you can seamlessly integrate predictions and data that is historical.
Welcome everyone to UpTech Report, our Apply Tech series. Today's episode is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. My guests today are Jorge Torres and Adam Carrigan, San Francisco and UK, co-founders of MindsDB. Welcome, guys. Good to have you on.
Great to be here.
Now, their product is an open source AI layer for databases. For those out there, if you're running queries on databases, maybe you're a developer or data analyst, this might be an intriguing tool and platform to check out. On your site, it says machine learning straight in databases through AI tables. I'm curious, how did you guys come across this problem initially and say, all right, we got to solve this, let's build a solution?
We saw that there's two branches of machine learning. There's kind of like research in machine learning, and then there is applied machine learning. And for the latter, people that are more interested in applying machine learning techniques, really the main ingredient is data, and you just take algorithms that work for different data types and you apply them. And given that the main ingredient is the information that you fit into those algorithms, and a lot of this data already exists in databases, then it made sense to treat machine learning as an actual data layer component. To be more precise, if you start thinking of machine learning as another representation of your data, again, as a table, then you can seamlessly integrate predictions and data that is historical with your applications or whatever your use case is. And in that line of thought, we decided that the best way to summarize it for someone that is used to working in a database is to express the mechanics of machine learning through a concept that we call AI tables. And the main difference between an AI table and a regular table is that when you query a regular table, you're essentially just looking for precise values that you have in your table. When you're querying an AI table, you can get predictions in return. So essentially, it generates data upon being queried. And this data, of course, is, or the way that it generates this data is based on the information that you have in your database itself.
This concept that it moved to, we need to solve it. What was the first kind of couple use cases? If you give me someone that you saw using now this solution, how does it change anything that they're normally doing?
Yeah, so usually when you're building an application in machine learning, you have your machine learning application that has to go through different stages. You first develop the model, you train the model. To train the model, you have to extract data. And then once you have a model trained, when this model is being consumed from your solution, it has to go again still to the database, pull some data, send it to the model. The model then gives you some return kind of predictions. You aggregate this information, go back into your application. So essentially, you have like this triangle of information going through like different stages of your application. In a traditional manner, you only have your application and your database, and information goes back and forth. So for a developer that uses MindDB, this remains the same. To give you one precise example, say for instance, you have a website that deals with online retail, and you want to predict demand for a given product. Ideally, what you would like to do is you want to select from the tables that have your products and your current inventory, and you will like to predict what will be the inventory for like the next week or so. And if you could do this straight from a query, then for the person that is building these applications, it will be the same way that you're querying your information. Nonetheless, now you're getting predictions and results. So that is one of the advantages of what we do. Essentially, is the same language, same process that you go at building any normal application. It's just that now you have predictive information in combination with historical information.
So like being able to do this existed, but it was a little bit more complicated and a two-step or multi-step process. And this is simplifying it effectively and keeping it all in the same place. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, yeah. It's all about simplification, and the main intuition behind it is that when you're applying machine learning, what you really want to do is to shrink the development life cycle of traditional research machine learning. Um, and right now, many departments have kind of carved out data science teams that work independently from the machine learning, from the engineering teams, mostly because the development life cycles are so much slower. But developers and people that build tools through data, they are used to just the agile form of development. So what we do essentially allows you to fit any machine learning task that involves structured data into the regular software development life cycles that companies may have.
So Adam, what's on the roadmap? What are you planning for MindsDB that you'd want people to know about?
Yeah, so one of the big things that we're working on over the next sort of several months is tighter integration with the databases. So we're working with a number of organizations, both for profit and not for profit, to have tighter integration with these databases. And so that means, as Jorge mentioned, that it becomes a much more streamlined process, and that these communities. One example, one database that we can mention is MariaDB. One of our investors is actually the former founder of MariaDB, and so working very closely with their community to bring this integration to their database.
What's the business model that you guys have in place, since there's no place to buy anything? So what's the future business model for this?
Yeah, so if you're a large organization, there are certain things that you need to be able to run MindsDB and scale it. If you're a smaller organization, the open source edition is completely fine for you. But once you need to scale up, you need to start your clustering, you need authentication, security. Then we have an enterprise edition, and that obviously comes with support and consulting and sort of the usual services that will help these organizations actually run it at scale.
What's a word of wisdom for a developer or data analyst when they're working in this type of environment that you'd want them to share? Because you've probably been hearing these questions, you've been working on this problem, but a word of wisdom that you could share.
Yeah, really, that anybody can do this. Previously, machine learning and AI sort of model creation was really just a domain of very highly skilled data scientists. And the message that we're trying to get across is that really anybody can do this, whether you're a developer, you're learning to code, whether you're a data analyst, a database admin, you can do this yourself, and you can build these models, you can move them to production very, very easily with MindsDB.
For those that want to learn a bit more about the story, join us for part 2 of our interview, where we're going to hear a bit more of the journey that they've been on. But to give a taste, this has been about 3 years in, and I'll ask both of you, what would you wish you knew 3 years ago that you know now? Jorge, why don't you share first? What would you wish you had known 3 years ago that you know now?
I think that we knew nothing about open source in general. So we've been learning everything the hard way. But to summarize into one thing, it would be that there are many ideas that you have that will require a lot of user validation. And the best way for anyone to get those ideas out there that we've learned is to go through the open source route, mostly because the open source community, since they're not expecting to pay at the beginning, they're the best way to get feedback into the solution that you have. And we're always going to be grateful to everyone that has contributed in the open source side of MindDB, purely because it went from an idea that Adam and I had all the way into something that thousands of people use that could not have been possible without having engaged in the open source. The second thing probably has to do with just because a business is open source doesn't mean that it can't be a business. What we've learned is that you can have a great user base in the open source community and still find a way to make it sustainable and make it VC backable and whatnot. So those two probably are the biggest insights.
Adam, for you.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we've learned, and I wish I knew a few years ago, was that almost certainly there has been someone or some company that has faced a problem before. When we were sort of very early stage, we were talking internally about how to solve many problems that come up with running a startup. And it wasn't really until we kind of started to engage more with the startup community in San Francisco. We participated in Y Combinator and Skydeck, and really talked to a number of great advisors, a number of startup founders that have been through this journey before. And they could give great advice. No situation is identical, but they have probably been through something similar. And reaching out to these people and getting their opinion is something that we now do on a regular basis, both with advisors, investors, just people we met for coffee. But I wish we'd done that a little bit sooner.
I appreciate both being able to break down what is MindsDB and where you guys are playing a role, as well as some insight. Definitely check out part 2 of our interview for a little bit more about their story. Thanks again for joining us.
Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.